Hi, I'm Tack, military analyst at Stratfor, and I'm joined here today by Paul Floyd, another military analyst at Stratfor, and we'll be talking about the official ending to the ISAF mission in Afghanistan and what that means for Afghanistan's future. So, Paul, tell us what actually changes on the ground with the end of this mission and the start of the follow-on U.S. operation?
The short answer is not much. So this has been a transition that's been going on for years now with the drawdown, but more importantly, we've seen Western forces and that NATO ISAF force has been pulling back from direct combat for a long time and been more in a training supportive role of Afghan security forces. And this is really just kind of symbolically marking the official transition, but this is really more like a no later than date of saying that this must be completely done by this time, but it's been going on in the process of. And as you know, and as we've seen in the media, there's still going to be a fairly robust force remaining after this in Operation Resolute Support that will continue to train, advise, and some will actually have, outside of that, there will be some actual forces that will have combat operations abilities as well. Will there be a huge change on January 1st? No. Afghanistan is going to be along the same trajectory it's been on for the last year or so.
So along that trajectory, the common view of the situation in Afghanistan right now is that security forces are not really capable of doing everything on their own yet. How do you see that capability of the Afghan forces? You've actually served with some of Afghanistan's special forces when you were doing your tour over there. From your experience and the current situation, how well is Afghanistan actually capable of dealing this situation where the U.S. is limiting its engagement?
In a very micro sort of view, the Afghan security forces aren't very good, especially relative to the NATO counterparts that have been supporting them. But relative to the people that they're fighting, the militancy and the insurgency that they're fighting, they're okay. But in a macro view, what we're talking about is, can the Afghan security force as a whole accomplish a certain objective? The answer is yes, but with a lot of caveats. One of them being that the Afghan security forces are artificial. And I say that in the sense of the Afghan state cannot support it on its own. Afghanistan has no economy. All of its ability to support and stand up the security force comes from foreign assistance. And that's really the big crutch here, is the billions of dollars in support that come in directly to make this state kind of functional and keep the security forces kind of functional.
So when you're saying that Afghanistan's main challenge is maintaining that financial support of the whole security organization, are there any places outside of the U.S. that Afghanistan's going to be looking for, or is this going to be mainly an actual U.S. responsibility in bankrolling security in Afghanistan, even if they're not directly operating those security organs?
That's an interesting question, and really the future of the Afghan state kind of depends on this. I think we've seen some interest from both India and China in some of the mineral wealth that might be available in Afghanistan. And so when we talk about that very decades in the future, there might be enough investment if there's enough stability to actually prop up a real economy that's legal. That can actually support these security forces outside of that. So those are probably the two biggest states, both China and India, that might actually be interested in that. Pakistan to a point even. But that will really hinge on stability to a certain degree. I mean, the short answer is Afghanistan is not going to be a pretty place. The U.S. objectives there have shifted a lot since the beginning. The original goal was, oust the Taliban government that has supported terrorists that have attacked the United States. And then it kind of shifted to, let's destroy them. And we found that was impossible. It's impossible because of the terrain and the fact that you've got an international border there, and we got limited support from Pakistan, and that becomes a very complicated quagmire. There's huge ethnic tensions and divides that make this very complicated, so that we're going to destroy this we got lost in that. But pulling back and kind of refocusing we've kind of gone back to that original mission, which is, let's not let Afghanistan turn into what it was in the first place that allowed 9/11 to happen. It cannot be a place where a government who supports terrorists, it can't be that place. It can't function that way. And it can't be so unstable that it affects the stability of Pakistan.
So, of course, the responsibility of tackling this security issue does not fall on the U.S. alone, and there's regional impacts from this insecurity as well. And we recently saw the agreement between Afghanistan and Pakistan to cooperate and combat the Taliban on both sides of the border. How successful can they be at that, and what kind of challenge actually remains from the Taliban in that area?
I think their success will be limited in reality. And I say that because both sides obviously have a militant problem, but both sides have used militants in achieving goals and have supported certain militants. Pakistan is famous for trying to parse out the good militants from the bad militants. And that really, as we've seen in recent events, it is coming back to bite them in some ways. But, the idea that both states will get together, have functional, security forces that then will work together in some kind of unison to attack both sides of this border in really severe terrain is kind of far-fetched. It's probably not going to happen. They have a very, very rocky relationship. And so we're seeing the very beginnings of them trying to do this. I think they'll have some capability in combating and containing the Taliban and some of the militants up in this region. But it would take such a coordinated effort, and we've seen nothing that would indicate that they can do this, to actually get into this terrain and seriously disrupt militant activity and degrade their capabilities very far. So, looking forward, Pakistan and Afghanistan have similar interests to a degree in dealing with this problem, but it's probably more about containing the problem, and they're going to cede certain territory, especially the more severe terrain that runs along this border in this area. But that's kind of where it's going to stop. The ability to actually destroy these militants is limited to almost non-existent.
Thank you very much for that. That was a very comprehensive explanation. Sorry, but that's all we've got time for. If you want to know more about this issue and others, please visit stratfor.com, and we wish you a Happy New Year.